Bodybuilding fans from around the world, welcome to another edition of The Fit Show right here on bodybuilding.com. You know, when we're talking about the Fall Classic, there's only one thing that comes to mind in bodybuilding circles, and that's the Mr. Olympia. And sitting to my left, a man no stranger to the Olympia stage, a 12-time Olympian, Mr. Shawn Ray.
12 times in the top 5.
In the top 5. We'll
13 years on that stage. So I spent half of my life on that stage there.
As it should be, Shawn. As it should be. Shawn, let me get right to the nitty-gritty here. We are on the eve of the Mr. Olympia. Debatably the 42nd Mr. Olympia this year.
Debatably because I just celebrated my 41st birthday, and I was born in 65.
All right, well, now we're getting into a number thing. We'll address that later on. But Shawn, we have 22 competitors in this year's Mr. Olympia. Before we get into handicapping the field, let me ask you this. The prejudging was switched to Friday night this year.
Right.
Normally, as everybody knows, prejudging Saturday morning, nighttime final, Saturday night. The competitors obviously have to hold their conditioning for about half a day. Some guys like that, some guys don't. What's the general consensus of the guys on the Friday night prejudging? Better or worse?
Well, I was there in '97 when that happened in Long Beach under the auspices of Wayne DeMilia, and none of the athletes were happy with that. You know, they come there to compete and get it over with. We have to go through that as amateurs. At the Nationals and the USA's, we have to peak Friday night for prejudging, repeat again Saturday night as a professional bodybuilder competing in the biggest show of the year. No one wants to have to try to hold it over a 48-hour period. It's dangerous, number one, because sometimes you get the wrong advice after prejudging and you try to pull out a lot of water, or you don't eat enough carbs and you're under the bright lights, and you know, a lot of stress, a lot of water retention, and sometimes on the flip side can happen. A guy will look great at prejudging and figure that they're doing so well that they can eat up and drink up, and they come in the night show and they don't look as good, but yet they get rewarded because 24 hours earlier they were prejudged. And the fan that buys only the VIP ticket that doesn't see the prejudging is shortchanged, scratching their head wondering, wow, that guy's water retention and smooth, and yet he's placing over this guy that's hard and dry.
And we've all heard those cascades of boos that come out, obviously,
Yeah.
especially at the national level, like you say, where we have a Friday night prejudging a Saturday night show. You got a 24-hour difference. Guys can change dramatically. Let me ask you this: can it be beneficial for some guys? Can they actually, eat up after the Friday night prejudging? Then they got all Saturday, obviously, to kind of fill out and come back Saturday. Can this be beneficial to the athletes?
It benefited one guy in '97, and that was Kevin Levrone. Kevin Levrone was in 6th place, and after the contest was over with and he was announced in 5th, they moved him up to 4th place behind the scenes. This is why I don't like this 2-day thing. Judge the contest on Saturday afternoon, have it over Saturday night, and be done with it. Unfortunately, Bob, the personalities that are on the Olympia stage this year, they're just not strong enough to voice their dissatisfaction with the way that's being run. So we don't know whether they like it or they don't. I know the whole contingency in '97, class of '97, no one liked it, including Mr. Olympia, Dorian Yates. That was his last year. But knowing behind-the-scenes things that goes on with some of these athletes and some of the desperate measures they take in order to get tighter, drier, harder, I don't think it's going to benefit the athlete at all. It may benefit the fan, but that fan that doesn't go to prejudging is the one that's going to suffer when they try to figure out why a guy that's smoother is beating a guy that's harder at the night show.
Shawn, let me ask you this. Now, given those set of circumstances, should the judges be judging Saturday night, or should they let sleeping dogs lie from the Friday night prejudging?
Well, it doesn't really make sense to me to even have it over 2 days if you're not going to judge both days and each day is weighed the same. If you come in smooth and water retentive on Saturday because you think you had it made on Friday, you should be marked down. Unfortunately, that's not how it works in this industry. I would like to see it work that way, because if Ronnie Coleman is dry as nails on Friday night and he's got a football field lead over the pack and he eats up on Saturday and into Saturday night and he comes in water retentive and smooth, yet they reward him, I mean, what is the fan that flew all the way from Europe to watch the show? What are they left thinking? How is this judged? It just adds more confusion to the show. Both prejudging and the night show should be weighed equally.
Gotcha. Well, we took the liberty of handicapping the field just before we went on air, so we pretty much placed the guys from 1 to 22, and roughly in order that we think that they might finish, or that certainly that they'll be competitive in. Let's start from the ground up, Shawn, and go through each athlete. Tell me what you think about them. Tell me where you think they're going to end up placing. You've done this a few times, haven't you?
Yes, sir.
You got
Let's do it.
Okay, let's start right off with Rodney St. Cloud. Just got the qualification here at Atlantic City. He's got 1 week to sharpen up before the Olympia. Where do you see Rodney St. Cloud in this field?
Well, let's state for the record. First of all, everyone in this show is going to walk with $4,000. That's a precedent. That's the first time that much money has been given out guaranteed to all the athletes. So God bless him.
Okay.
Unfortunately, there's only going to be the top 10 that are going to be left standing. So after that, we've really got 12 athletes that are going to be left out of the cold, because really it is a 10-man contest, and those not in the top 10 basically are worthy of honorable mention. I believe that Rodney St. Cloud, for all the improvements that he's made, is not going to make it into the top 10, but he'll be fighting it out somewhere around the 15th spot with this lineup. And I don't mean any disrespect by that. These guys are good, and the talent pool is deep. Rodney St. Cloud's a good bodybuilder, but not good enough to make the cut in the top 10.
You got it. Paco Batista obviously just qualified with his win in Spain. How's he going to fare in the Olympia with where aesthetics are going to come more into play, and he's not on Spanish soil anymore?
He's one of those guys like a Tom Platz that comes along with the freaky type of a body, and people are going to freak out when they see the size of this guy's legs. But unfortunately, once you've seen the size of the legs, everything else pales in comparison, and the mystique is going to be gone. He comes in very vascular, but doesn't display a whole lot of deep cuts in his physique. You see a little bit of hint of cross striations in his thighs every now and again. Nice separation between the hamstring and the quadricep. But outside of that, the biceps, the back thickness, the chest, there's a lot of things wrong on that physique, and it gets old really quick after you get past the thighs. He's one of those guys that are going to be out of the top 15.
The 50-year-old phenom and the OG Terminator himself, Mr. Vince Taylor.
Former national champion, former winner of the most professional bodybuilding shows before Ronnie Coleman eclipsed that. Vince Taylor at 50 years old is now coming back after a 5-year hiatus, qualified by getting 3rd place in Australia. Interesting, because the physique is starting to show a little wear and tear as far as the size of the legs, the density of the muscle. He's still got those wonderful calves. He's got the thick arms. The posing is still there. He poses like masterfully, and you'll see the difference in that in some of the other competitors. Unfortunately, his skin is a little bit too thick, and he carries a little bit too much water under the muscle to dry out to be competitive with that top 10. But I do see Vince somewhere between 10 and 15.
Okay. Well, we just brought him up, Mustafa Muhammad. Does he have enough time in a week to turn it around? He was holding a ton of water from all reports in Spain. Is a week enough time, Shawn, or can this guy get back that glory that brought him so much notoriety last year?
Knowing what he's got to do, travel from Europe and come over to Las Vegas, the desert, regroup and try to reorganize what he's trying to do with his physique, I don't believe it's going to be enough. Typically at the Mr. Olympia, they'll place the top 15, and after that, everybody else is 16th. I think he's going to find himself somewhere in that lineup at the bottom 16.
Well, he's a rookie this year, and he made a big splash, obviously, with a 3rd place finish also in Spain. Finally qualifying this year, Dennis Wolf.
Dennis Wolf is a guy to watch. Unfortunately, at the Mr. Olympia, when you come in as a rookie with not really much of a track record, it's very, very hard to get a good look. And you'll know from last year, sometimes they group them in sections of here's the top 3, here's 4 through 6, and some of these guys don't even get a chance to be competitive. Dennis Wolf's one of those guys that has an opportunity here to be somewhere around 14th, 15th place.
Okay, one of your own from Team Biotech, Bill Wilmore.
Yeah, Bill Wilmore, the national champion from 2005, qualified for this contest by placing 5th in Denver and also 5th in New York. That's right, where the top 5 qualify. A very good bodybuilder. Bill's about 36, 37 years old, so he's not a young guy, but it is his first time at the Olympia. Sometimes when it's your first time, you train a little bit harder and you do just a little bit more because you're hungry to make a first impression. Yes, he does have a great supplement company behind him, helping him train for this competition and prepare without any stress. I think Billy Wilmore will be somewhere in there fighting it out for around 15th or 14th place as well.
Okay, here's a guy coming up now that I personally think is one of the most overlooked pros that's out on the circuit. He actually won a pro show this year, and that was the Australian that Vince Taylor actually qualified, I believe, in 3rd place, Ronnie Coleman.
Ronnie Coleman is a very strong bodybuilder. He's strong in all the areas. Unfortunately, nothing really jumps out at you. I had one of those physiques that didn't jump out at you as well, but I had the genetics that kind of carried me through. Ronnie Coleman, along the lines of some of the smaller bodybuilders that were good and compact, he's the guy that could possibly be somewhere around 12th or 13th place.
Here's a guy who's had his share of ups and downs the past year and a half, especially Troy Alves.
Yeah, Troy, I saw him 2 weeks ago. He came out to California to do a photo shoot with Chris Lunn. His problem areas were his hamstrings and his glutes and the water retention in that general region. He's drying out nicely at this point in the game as far as the other years that came along. He made a mistake and jumped in the Denver Pro contest. He did qualify for this contest by doing so, and he was off. It just goes to speak of how good he can be. But he's 40 years old now, and he's one of those guys that has a question mark. He could be the X factor. I believe he's going to be right on the bubble of that 10th spot.
Okay, well, we're going to move into our kind of our round 2 guys here, the middle of the pack guys. guys that certainly could make a splash, all depending on obviously how they show up on game day.
Sure.
And first name that comes to mind, a guy who really could have won a few more pro shows this past year had he chose to compete, David Henry.
David Henry, he's a pocket rocket. This guy's about 182 pounds, 185 pounds. One of those guys that gets in great condition. You like to see the texture of the skin. He gets his coloring right down. Great midsection. He's got nice striations, great triceps, biceps, shoulders, small waist, big back. The knock on him, he doesn't have a whole lot of thigh sweep. He's not a very tall bodybuilder. He's on a good day, maybe he's 5'4". And as small as he is, he's going to have a very tough time going into Mr. Olympia at that height. I know that a year ago, the day before the Olympia, he won a show, and he turned around on the night of the Olympia and he wasn't in the top 10. He's one of those guys that's going to be battling and struggling to get into the top 10, as good as he is.
You got it. Well, a guy who just obviously qualified also at the Spanish show with a runner-up finish. A lot of guys in the on the internet and abroad think that this guy should have won the show, Marcus Rule.
Well, again, I said Marcus Rule represents the size, the freakiness, the guys like Jean-Pierre Fuchs and Dorian brought to the stage, and there's really not a whole lot of guys that are now in the Marcus Rule class that like Paul Dillette brought to the stage. Marcus kind of stands alone. It just depends on what the judges want to do with this guy. I wasn't in Spain, but for Marcus to get beat by Paco Batista in Spain, either there was a Spanish contingency that liked Paco's look, or Marcus wasn't 100%. And Marcus not 100%, a lot of guys can beat him. So the verdict is still going to be out. If he dials it in and becomes the Marcus Rule that he used to be, which is better than the one we saw last year when he got married, he could be in that top 10 because he's got the size and the muscle to stand up there with a guy like Gunther and a guy like Ronnie.
Interesting enough, Sean, a lot of the banter back and forth this year has been because Marcus got married. This may have had an impact on his career, much like you hear with boxing and other athletes in different sports. Any impact getting married?
Well, most notably Andre Agassi. You know, this is a guy that was on the top of the tennis world, and he married a Hollywood starlet by the name of Brooke Shields, and he went from being the #3 player all the way down to 166 in a matter of 2 years' time. They broke up. He married another tennis player, and he shot right back up in the rankings and got his game back to business. Sometimes you can get distracted of the business of bodybuilding because when you put that ring on your finger, which you're going to be experiencing here in like the next 2 weeks.
Yeah, there we go.
There's something to be said for giving of your time. And I know Marcus was probably still in the honeymoon phase when he had to prepare for the Mr. Olympia, which is very hard to do because you're being emotionally distracted, you're being physically distracted, and yet you still want to make your best showing for the Olympia. And it's very hard to do when you're you're planning on a new house and you're talking about the future with your wife and your family. I've seen a lot of guys, miss their peak on that honeymoon phase of the first year. I believe he's taking his lumps. He's had a full year to think about it and regroup, and if he's done all of those things, he's one of those guys that's going to be standing in the end at the top 10.
Well, it doesn't seem to have done Tiger Woods too bad.
No.
Another one from Team Biotech, the marvelous one himself, Melvin Anthony.
Melvin was 7th place last year, and he got 6th place at the Arnold Classic and won the Best Posing Award. Did a lot of traveling, making a lot of appearances. When you're the best poser in the bodybuilding business, you're going to be in popular demand. I know that he's trying to come in heavier. He's working with Chad Nichols. He's been very quiet. A couple of things on the internet. He's one of those guys that if he doesn't improve on his weaknesses, he's going to be stuck right in there 7th, 8th place again. The weaknesses in the knock are he doesn't have the shoulder cap, he doesn't have the full pecs, and the hamstrings and the glutes are problematic, much like that of Troy Alves. If he tightens up those areas and he improves on those areas, they will reward him, and he could be one of those guys that inches his way into the top 6, where Dennis James last year just barely nudged him out.
Well, speaking of fullness and hamstrings, this next guy could really upset the apple cart, Branch Warren.
Branch Warren, the X Factor, because I believe last year, if I'm not mistaken, Branch was somewhere around 8th place.
He was, about somewhere between 8th and 10th, if memory serves.
And it was coming off of a very busy year for the kid. He came in, he challenged for the Arnold Classic title, and got 2nd place. Went on to Australia, missed his peak miserably, but I believe he did a honeymoon out there as well.
Yeah, there you go. There it is.
And he's been very quiet. And sometimes guys like that go underground and they're quiet. It's because they're doing the business of bodybuilding. I'm hoping that he has been doing the business of bodybuilding. He's going to wind up somewhere in the same place he was last year. Even if he does improve, I've got him somewhere around 8th or 9th place.
Well, here's a guy who finally won his first pro show this year and narrowly missed out on the second one here at the Durham Charles, and that's Johnny Jackson.
It was a long time coming for Johnny Jackson because he's certainly put in his mileage. He's one of the strongest bodybuilders pound for pound in this business. The knock on Johnny Jackson are those calves and his hamstrings. Doesn't have a lot of great stage presence, but this is a blue-collar bodybuilder who's nudged his way all the way up until he got his first place comeuppance. Now here at the Mr. Olympia, where he's gotten no respect and he's been shown no love, this might be a year that he breaks into that top 10 and he can get some justification for his hard work. If it doesn't happen, I don't believe it's going to be because he didn't do the business of bodybuilding, but again, this is a genetic freak show, and Johnny Jackson's not blessed with the best genetics because he's a little top-heavy. But if he worked on those weaknesses and he brings them into the Mr. Olympia, he might find that he'll get rewarded this year.
Okay, now here's a guy that's really tough to place. Traditionally, doesn't do as well as he probably thinks he should at the Olympia level. But like as you said 1,000 times now, king of the $10,000 shows, fresh off a victory, Durham Charles.
And really, Durham Charles, Johnny Jackson, David Henry, even a Troy Alves, that's a contest. There's a contest within that. The Mr. Olympia comes around, and suddenly at 220 pounds, it's just not good enough to be in that top 6 lineup in the final pose down. The one thing about Durham Charles is he never gets the call-outs at the Mr. Olympia in order to move up. He gets called out with guys that he's already beaten a lot of times, and he doesn't get a chance to stand up next to guys that he's never beaten. And I hope that he can bring that kind of conditioning where it warrants him getting called out with guys like Gustavo Bedell, like Melvin Anthony, and even the guys like Dennis James. That's a nice competitive call-out for a guy like Durham Charles. But if he winds up getting called out with guys like Branch Warren, Tony Freeman, and David Henry, then we kind of already have him pigeonholed for somewhere between 7th place and 10th place. It really does, it's very crucial for a guy like Durham Charles, the king of the $10,000 shows, to get called out with guys that he has not beaten, because those guys are not doing those $10,000 shows. So this is his opportunity. Hopefully he'll have that chance and be in that top 6 if he gets a good look.
Shawn, one thing I know that Durham really has to do is he has to nail it. He has got to be 100% to even be considered and to hopefully get those high call-outs.
Well, and on the downside with Durham being one of the nicest guys in the business, he's about 37, 38 years old. The hamstrings are just not up to snuff at the Olympia level. The legs really hurt him. The calves hurt him. He's got a great bicep. He's got a great tricep. He's a masterful poser. Turn around to the back. The thickness isn't so deep. The cuts in the thighs are second to none. I believe him and Jay Cutler probably have the best thigh separation, but the thighs are slender. And this is a show where mass, shape, symmetry, definition, all of that factors in. He has a tendency to look great standing there, but when he turns around to the rear, he doesn't look as good from the back as he does from the front. And these are things that kind of hold Durham Charles back. They've all got weaknesses, but really at this show, you've got to display your strengths. So hopefully he'll play to his strengths at this show and get a good look.
Well, Shawn, we've got we're down to our top 6. Unfortunately, we've got 8 guys that possibly for that top 6, and we're going to handicap that right after this.
Hi, I'm Shawn Ray, 13-time Olympia competitor and biotech spokesperson. I want to introduce to you guys a new supplement on the market, Viraloid, pro-hormone-free testosterone enhancer. Had I had this when I was competing in the Mr. Olympia those 13 years, I would have been Mr. Olympia.
Welcome back to the 2006 Olympia Countdown. I'm Bob Cicherillo, and handicapping the event with me, former Olympian himself, Mr. Shawn Ray.
Yes.
Shawn, we have the top 6 guys. Problem is, we have 8 candidates.
That's it.
2 people are not going to be very happy.
Well, when it comes down to constructive criticism, very few of the athletes are, but they do listen. I know that for a fact because I hear the reviews all the time, and we try to be objective here, and we're not experts at judging, but we're also not Stevie Wonder. We've got some years of history behind us. We kind of have a general idea of what the judges are looking for, some of the things that the judges have. Unfortunately, from a critical position that we sit in, where we critique, a lot of times it's not what they have, it's what they don't have, which is what we're critiquing. And it's a totality of all the good body parts that makes a Mr. Olympia. The one thing that I like about Mr. Olympia is he should be the one that has the fewest body part weaknesses. Therefore, we have a tendency to over-criticize the guys with the weaknesses, but typically they're the easiest thing to see on a bodybuilder. So that's where we start with breaking them down. They listen to us, they watch, and then they go to the gym and they work on it harder than ever because they know that if we see the weaknesses, the judges do as well. So we're just the messengers, don't shoot us.
You got it. Well, Shawn, you mentioned the X Factor earlier, and I can't help but bring to mind the X-Man himself, Tony Freeman. a real big question mark here at the Olympia.
Well, it's a big question mark because Tony Freeman's not new to this game. He's been around for a while. Again, he came on strong at the Europa Pro Show, his first victory as a pro bodybuilder, but he was inching his way along. A little short change at the Arnold Classic. I made comment that the guy needs to come in about 50 pounds bigger because of the guys that were smaller than him, shorter, and were heavier than him. Gunther Schlierkamp, Marcus Rule, these guys are competing at much heavier weights than Tony Freeman, and Tony Freeman still got him by 3 or 4 inches. And he listened to that, he heard it, and I don't think he heard it for the first time, but he did do the business of bodybuilding and packed on extra muscle, and they rewarded him for it. Hopefully he didn't stay dieting too hard from the Europa Pro to the Mr. Olympia and lose that much needed muscle on that stage, because he's so tall that he can come in looking lanky and rangy. And if that happens, Tony Freeman can be one of those bodybuilders that's up there from 7 through 10, suddenly down finding himself around 10 through 15. If he's around the 275, 280 mark, that's a good number for a guy his height, around 6'3". What's going to happen here, though, is he's going to see, standing next to these bodybuilders at this level of competition, that his weak points, the calves, the hamstrings, the lack of back thickness, the lack of thickness overall for a guy his size, it's going to be very apparent when he stands up there, and if he has an opportunity to stand next to a Marcus Rule or stand next to Ronnie Coleman, for example, in shape. So Tony is the X factor because he has the capability of being in that top 8 guys, but I think it's probably going to be more like between 7 and 10.
I talked to Tony immediately after his victory, and he assured me that he thought he was somewhere between 90 and 95%, and he was actually intending on going up about 10 pounds and being even in better condition at the Olympia. Hypothetical, Shawn. If Tony Freeman can get on stage at about 290 to 95, which would be about 10 pounds up from where he was, can he conceivably be in that top 5 or 6?
I doubt it, because he's going to have the condition to go along with it. It's all relative, and in that short amount of time, there's no way he can put on 10 pounds of muscle and come in ripped to shreds. He may be 10 pounds heavier, but it's not going to translate to the detail and the definition that a Ronnie Coleman displays, or even a Jake Cutler displays, or even Gustavo Bedell. The muscle is just different, the quality, the texture, and the dryness. And Tony Freeman, he knows he needs to be heavier, so that's a given. I would rather look in the mirror if I were Tony Freeman and see the detail and the definition coming out on my body than look on a scale that tells me I'm 10 pounds heavier, but I'm softer, I'm watery. He needs to be nails through the back area, because the back is where the contest is won and lost. Gustavo, Cutler, even Gunther, they all, when they're dry, they've got some very nice backs. And this is him being as big as he is going to be compared with a guy like Ronnie. He's going to be compared with a guy like Gunther or Marcus Rule, just on simple height and mass. And now is when you're going to really start to see the weaknesses. You're going to start to see the pec tear. You're going to start to see that he needs bigger arms. You're going to see that he needs to have bigger, fuller thighs. And that's just, the pictures won't lie, and the comparisons won't lie. I'm hoping he gets bigger with more detail. But in that short amount of time, I'm going to find that very hard to believe it's possible, because there's just not enough time. He is a 40-year-old bodybuilder. And mind you, the Europa show was not the Olympia. I mean, a lot of guys can win these smaller shows, but when you get to the Olympia, some of these guys get lost in the shuffle.
Well, Shawn, when it comes to putting on muscle, this next guy is second to none. Dennis James. Can he be a menace on Olympia Day?
He's one of those guys that looks like Mr. Olympia in the gym with a tank top on. There's no question.
We've all seen the pictures.
Very rarely has it transpired onto that Mr. Olympia stage. Once he landed in 4th place out of his, 7, 8, 9-year career. He was 6th place last year and requalified for the Olympia that way. Wound up going to New York in May, and he wound up in 3rd place, a show that he should have won, being that he was one of the only Olympians there. Got upset by the rookie Phil Heath, got upset by even Darren Charles. That's classic of what can happen to an Olympian that's not competing in the Olympia. These shows are so small that you think you can just work your way into shape and win, and you get beat by these upstarts. Dennis James is a guy that has to nail it on the day, and I have yet to see him actually nail it on the day come the Mr. Olympia time. I don't know if it's pressure, water retention, overcarbing. Problematic areas are the abdominals. He's got to maintain control of his midsection. It has a tendency to be bloated from the side and from the front in transition of poses. And also, he doesn't have the fullest thighs. They look great when he's standing there, but there's not a whole lot of separation. The back detail is not there when he hits the rear double back bicep, but he does have a great lat spread from the rear. He's got a great side chest. He's got a very nice, most muscular, and I think that if Dennis controls his midsection, actually comes in lighter than he was last year, he'll actually look bigger and be more competitive than he was.
You just took the next question out of my mouth, Shawn. The question was going to be, is Dennis too big for his own good? I know that's blasphemy in bodybuilding circles, but can a guy actually have too much muscle on his frame where it starts obscuring separation of muscle groups? And separation is always the key word when you're talking about the Olympia caliber.
Yeah, and not to get that confused, separation really translates over to quality. So you can be huge in the gym all you want to, but when you get on stage, if you're 290 pounds and you don't have the separation, you don't have the quality. So Dennis James is on the cusp. He's 5'8", competing at like 265, 270, when really he should be somewhere around the 245, 240 range and be more competitive. I'd like to see that happen, but I think he is a slave to the size, and typically 9 times out of 10, it overruns what his better judgment should be, which is to come in lighter. So we'll see what he winds up doing, but he could take him. He's in control of himself coming out of that top 6.
Another one of our big men in the countdown, Gunther Schlierkamp, the German giant, the only man to beat Ronnie in recent history. A fluke, or does he have what it takes to take down the champ?
Well, and he's also the perennial nice guy with the Hollywood hair and the Hollywood smile. As a matter of fact, he's in a movie called Beer Fest. His fiancée is starring on The Biggest Loser as a personal trainer. I mean, his dream came true. He moved over from Austria or from Germany.
No, that was Arnold.
He moved over
different guy.
Moved over from Germany, met Joe Weider, got his little contract. He winds up being the cover boy and upsets the champion and lands the hot chick. And he's in the movies. And now here comes the Mr. Olympia. This is a guy that typically has made a career off of that one win over Ronnie Coleman. He doesn't have the greatest genetics. Kind of has slouchy shoulders. Got great biceps, but the triceps are really non-existent. Has kind of funky thighs. There's no real thigh separation to him. There's no real thigh sweep to him. But from the side, he gets away with the side chest because he's got good separation between the hamstring and the thigh. The calves are relatively non-existent. There's nothing really going on there. But he was 4th place, 5th place in the Mr. Olympia. This is a guy, I believe, that is up there based on his prior accomplishments. I'd like to see him come in and actually radically alter his physique and show the improvements on the weaknesses that are there. Genetic or otherwise, there's a lot of things going wrong with Gunther's physique. He's got to be in shape. And if he's in shape, he has just enough to carry himself into the top 6. I believe he'll wind up in 6th.
Well, one of the smart moves Gunther did make was employing the services of super trainer and the godfather of bodybuilding himself, Charles Glass, in the offseason.
Well, Charles Glass has done wonders with some bodybuilders who have been lost in searching for that magic formula, that magic solution, and typically it transpires in the gym. He is a slave to making these bodybuilders bring out the very best that they have to offer. If anybody can do it, he'll bring Gunther to the top shape and make those improvements in the offseason.
Shawn, if Tony Freeman is the X factor, then this next guy has got to be the Y factor. Again, a huge question mark when it comes to the Olympia. If the Olympia was based on potential, this guy may well be the reigning champ, Victor Martinez.
Well, Ronnie Coleman claims that he's going to be the next Mr. Olympia, but I believe Victor Martinez has been one of those guys that's a promise not kept. He hit his peak at the Nationals and won his pro card, and he won the GNC Pro, and since then he's always been one of those guys that has the potential to win but never has won. He needs to be 100%, and if he's not going to be in that top 6, period.
Question. If Victor Martinez hits it 100%, what is the highest placing you think he can get? Can he upset a Dexter Jackson or even a Jay Cutler if he's 100%?
He can upset the apple cart, but I believe that he's not getting any younger. This has got to be Victor's breakthrough year, or it's not going to happen, bar none.
You got it. Well, we are down to our top 4 guys, Shawn, and we're going to get to those right after this.
For years, people have thought of me simply as a great poser. They seem to overlook the pain and sweat that goes into building this physique. But this is going to be different. I'm bigger, I'm stronger, I'm in better condition than ever, and it's all thanks to 17HD, the new anabolic thermogenic formula by Biotech. So just keep thinking I'm a great poser, and I'm gonna wave when I pass you by. So just keep thinking I'm a great poser.
And we're back, 2006 Mr. Olympia, just around the corner. Shawn, we are down to our final 4.
Well, the bottom line is, it's really about the top 3. But Mr. Number 4 is not irrelevant, and that can be one of 4 guys.
Absolutely.
Let's get to it.
And that first guy, a man who actually beat Ronnie Coleman, although it was in the challenge round last year, Gustavo Bedell.
Gustavo's been very, very quiet. Mind you, last year, I warned the guy not to go into the Arnold Classic. And when he did go in, not to sound like I'm a Swami or anything, it didn't happen for him. I think he was 4th place in that competition. He should have been competing with Dexter Jackson for #1 spot. He's a guy that has to nail his condition spot on, or else the consequences can be tragic. I mean, he's walking a very fine line on that weight department, like a Dennis James. Comes in 5 pounds too heavy, it all goes to the midsection. And then suddenly the back detail is gone, and the hamstrings and the glutes are gone. It could fall all apart. He's one of those guys that could actually come in 5 pounds lighter than he did last year and be much more competitive with a guy like a Dexter Jackson, with a guy like Jay Cutler. These are 2 guys that he can beat. And,
Absolutely, yeah.
And he is formidable. 3 years ago, we wouldn't even been talking about this guy, which makes it all the more special for a guy like Gustavo to do well, because we like to see these guys come from the back of the pack. I remember the guy was competing in the Mr. Olympia in 2002.
Yeah.
Just happened to be there. I believe it was like 17th place, and he was one of the happiest guys. Came over from Puerto Rico, and now he's living in Las Vegas, transformed his life. He's got a very good contract with his company, and he's been doing the business of bodybuilding. He's one of those quiet bodybuilders. Got knocked a few times by some people about being cocky and arrogant. This is a guy that's paid his dues, and he's not going to take it anymore. He wants some respect, and if he's going to get it, he's going to have to go through Jay Cutler and Dexter Jackson and ultimately face Ronnie Coleman again.
Well, Shawn, I'm going to put you on the spot. Give me your final placing prediction for Gustavo Bedell.
I got Gustavo in 4th place.
You got it. And on to potentially 3rd place, the Blade himself, Dexter Jackson.
Well, Dexter's one of those guys that, I personally, him taking a year off of last year's Mr. Olympia and going to the Arnold and winning a 2nd time, I probably would have done the same thing. As a matter of fact, I wouldn't want anything to do with the Ronnie Coleman retirement party in his 9th run at the Mr. Olympia. Dexter was smart in doing that because A, he gave his body some time to recover. B, he came off of another $100,000 victory, was able to go on the road and make the guest posing. There's a nice break between the Arnold and the Olympia to make improvements. Jay Cutler knows it all too familiar. He's a 3-time former Arnold Classic champion. But by coming back to the Mr. Olympia and taking that time off and getting that Arnold Classic under his belt, I believe Dexter Jackson would not show up at this year's Mr. Olympia if he didn't firmly believe he can beat Jay Cutler, and I believe him.
Speaking of beating Jay Cutler, and I don't want to actually shoot past Jay too much here, but Dexter actually brings up kind of an interesting scenario, and that is he is so diametrically different than Ronnie, as opposed to Jay Cutler, who matches up with Ronnie, obviously, in some parts, and some not so much, as Ronnie's the best in the world from the back. But can a Dexter Jackson conceivably beat Ronnie Coleman if he's off, or would he stand a better chance than Jay Cutler of being the next new Mr. Olympia?
Well, I'll tell you what. I mean, Jay Cutler, for all intents and purposes, is probably the most likable guy to become Mr. Olympia by the fans. But when you break it down, pound for pound, shape, balance, symmetry, Dexter Jackson, I believe, just has more tools in his arsenal and a stronger case to become Mr. Olympia. That being said, Ronnie Coleman, short of a ninja attack and missing the Mr. Olympia, maybe taking the wrong flight and winding up in New York, the contest is going to take place between Jay Cutler and Dexter Jackson, I believe. And it's really going to be for the #2 spot. Those 2 guys, it's going to be one or the other. Much like when I was up against Dorian Yates. It's either you like the big guy or you like the symmetrical guy. But they both have their fair share amount of weaknesses. Dexter Jackson does not have any calves. Dexter Jackson doesn't have any thigh separation. He has a long torso. Those are things that anybody can look at his physique and see. He doesn't take a bodybuilding expert. Jay Cutler, he has a wide waist. He's kind of blocky at times. He doesn't have the best back thickness by comparison to a Dexter Jackson or a Ronnie Coleman. He's not the most graceful poser on a bodybuilding stage. Now that we've got all the weaknesses out of the picture, let's talk about the strengths. There's nobody's legs that are better than Jay Cutler's as far as I'm concerned from the front. He's got calves and he's got feathers in his thighs. Ronnie Coleman can only dream about having, which is why Jay Cutler won the Biotech $10,000 Crazy Legs Award last year.
Nice shameless plug there, Shawn.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was available through Biotech, and he came to get the $10,000.
Absolutely.
I'm just pointing it out.
Absolutely.
And on the other side, you have Dexter Jackson, who in his side chest, I mean, there's not one iota of criticism in his side chest. He hits it better than Ronnie, and he hits it better than Jay. Dexter, I believe, is a little bit better at hiding his flaws than a Jay Cutler. And if you start analyzing those 2 physiques and you break it down to who has the most flaws and who's able to pose and display their physique the best, I believe you'll wind up giving the nod to a Dexter Jackson over Jay Cutler. Jay, 2% off, can take himself out of the picture. Dexter, 5% off, he's still better than Jay Cutler. Now, what that translates to on an Olympia stage with an Olympiad panel with these 2 former Arnold Classic champions with 5 trophies between them, We have yet to be seen. In 5 days, we'll find out. But I do believe they'll both be flanking Ronnie Coleman on one side or the other. They'll both be going home before Ronnie Coleman. But that's where the contest is going to be. My personal opinion is a guy like Dexter Jackson, who has not hit his peak, I believe will get the nod over Jay Cutler, who I think we've probably seen the best of Jay Cutler. And that best is very good.
And speaking of the best of Jay Cutler, we pretty much just gone over Jay with his physique. Let me ask you about the mentality of Jay Cutler right now. Second place, second place, second place. This is just a hurdle he can't get over? Or we've all seen pictures of Jay, and he's actually not only put on some size, but probably in the best conditioning he's been this far out since the 2001 Jay Cutler, who arguably a lot of people had in front of Ronnie Coleman.
I saw Jay guest pose in April, and Jay was doing the business of bodybuilding. I saw Ronnie Coleman guest pose in March, and you'd give Jay Cutler the Mr. Olympia trophy at that stage. But that being said, the Mr. Olympia is on September 29th and September 30th. What they look like throughout the year is irrelevant. 2 weeks before the show or even 1 day before the show. Ronnie Coleman somehow masterfully has won 8 Mr. Olympias and got it together in time for the big dance. Jay Cutler's not the first guy to get second to Ronnie Coleman. Flex Wheeler was second 3 times to Ronnie Coleman and Dorian Yates. Myself was 2-time runner-up to Dorian Yates. Kevin Levrone, a 4-time first runner-up. I mean, he's in the same company as Jay. There's a lot of guys used to getting second to the Mr. Olympia. There's nobody that handles it better than Jay Cutler. The problem with that is he's still not content. And that's where the X factor comes in versus Dexter Jackson, because I do know what it feels like to get second twice and Jay 4 times, whereas Dexter doesn't know what that's like. And so I believe that Jay, if he's hungry enough and dials it in, he didn't need to be bigger. He needed to be tighter. And he needed to bring his weakness up. He needed to get more thickness in his back. He needed to tighten up the glutes and rip up those hamstrings, which are Ronnie Coleman's strengths by comparison. I saw the pictures of Jay, and by himself, he could be Mr. Olympia. I saw Dexter Jackson by himself, he could be Mr. Olympia. It really is going to come down to hunger. And I think that Jay's thorn in his side is that if he hangs up his trunks and he's second for the 5th straight time and Ronnie Coleman retires, Jay would come back. He'll come back because he knows he can beat some of the guys that are going to be left standing. But that's not going to get rid of Ronnie Coleman if Ronnie wins. Ronnie hasn't said he's going to go anywhere yet.
No, if anything, he said that he's all intent on going for number 10 if he should get number 9.
Well, let me just say this. Jay is a thinking man's blue-collar bodybuilder. He doesn't want to be competing at 40 years old for the Mr. Olympia title. He knows how dangerous this game of bodybuilding, chasing ghosts, can get. He needs a plan for his future, and I know he was talking about starting a family. He's got some business interests. If that stuff starts to take precedence over this pursuit of the Mr. Olympia title, he can very well walk away from the sport and be content with getting number 2 in the world 5 times. But I still think he's hungry enough that he'll push Dexter Jackson for everything he's worth. I'm not writing him off. He has the tools. He's already proven it over the years. The question is whether or not he's going to be a part of Ronnie Coleman's retirement party or upset the apple cart. And to do that, he's going to go through Dexter and Ronnie. Now,
Shawn, hypothetically, let's just say Ronnie comes in off. Okay, let's say he comes in real big like a couple years ago where he came in at 300 pounds. Definitely a little bit off. Again, let's say Dexter and Jay come in very much on. Both of them nearly 100% if not. Question to you. Now, since you think that Dexter is a better bodybuilder than Jay, does that offset the idea that Jay is the perennial second-place finisher? Meaning, if Ronnie comes in off, is Jay going to be crowned a new Mr. Olympia, or with Dexter Jackson?
Well, let me say I'm biased. I mean, obviously, I'm leaning towards Dexter's physique because I resemble his physique. I like his physique. His package is totally the opposite of Jay. I'd put Jay over there with Ronnie and Dorian and some of the bigger guys. That's not a bad thing, but, my personal is like a Dexter Jackson, a Troy Alves, a Melvin Anthony, and that's where I'm at. So I may be biased in that area.
That's the physicality portion of it. But given the politics of it, and by politics I only mean that, not that it's set up or that, hey, we want to give Jay the title, but like I say, he's kind of dug himself in that second place position. Does that automatically give him the bump, or could they see fit to put Dexter Jackson as Mr. O?
Well, I'll tell you what. The person that's going to be the most scrutinized in this contest is going to be Ronnie Coleman. If Ronnie Coleman comes in 5% off, I personally believe they will take that title away and give it to somebody like Jay Cutler or Dexter Jackson, somebody that's deserving of it. Ronnie's pigeonholed himself so firmly in that position of being darn near perfect or better than he was last year that if he comes in anything less, he's going to wind up being a bridesmaid, and he's going to get a taste of what Jay Cutler's been tasting for the past 4 years. And I would have no problem with that. It might be a big upset in bodybuilding, but let me tell you, on any given day, Jay Cutler and Dexter Jackson are fully capable of beating Ronnie Coleman if he's not 100%. At 98%, Ronnie Coleman can lose that title, and I wouldn't bat an eye. I would be the first one standing up and clapping for the new champ. And Jay Cutler could be that guy.
And as you say, I think he will be scrutinized even more. Again, he has set a bar that only he can obviously get above. Like I say, he does come in 100% pretty much most of the time. Whether he comes in bigger or smaller is almost irrelevant.
Right.
Even when he was bigger, he was 100% for what he was, and when he was smaller, he was certainly 100%. Thus, he's the 8-time Mr. Olympia. But that brings us to Ronnie Coleman, the incumbent champion, 8-time Mr. Olympia, tied with Lee Haney. History is going to be made one way or the other, Shawn, depending on whose name is called.
Right. Well, Ronnie Coleman has been there more times than you and I. As a matter of fact, with this contest, this will be Ronnie Coleman's 14th Mr. Olympia competition, which makes him the all-time entrant into this contest, breaking the tie with me, myself, and Albert Beckles, 13 years participating. In his 14th try, at 42 years young, Ronnie Coleman is going places that no man's ever gone as far as consistency is concerned. He has more to lose in this contest by losing the title of Mr. Olympia than he does by winning it. If he wins it, people are going to be trying to throw the guy a retirement party. Thanks for the memories. See you later. Goodbye. Go out with a bang. But Ronnie Coleman's mentality is, if it ain't broke, I ain't trying to fix it. Why am I going to go anywhere if I just won the Mr. Olympia? If nothing else, let's start seeing some chinks in my armor. From what I understand, and all indications are, there already are some chinks in his armor. Apparently he's been battling some tricep problems, some lower back problems. But pictures don't lie, and his pictures look like Ronnie Coleman. Chris Lund just got done shooting him for Flex Magazine, and Ronnie Coleman has been doing the business of bodybuilding. I expect nothing than the best from Ronnie Coleman and his trainer, Chad Nichols. The only thing that I do expect that will happen is that, like you said, he raised the bar so high that if it's Ronnie Coleman of last year is going to get beat this year. There's no question about it. And that could be one of the best things that happened to bodybuilding. It couldn't happen to a nicer guy because we all love Ronnie Coleman. How unfortunate it is that the better you get, the more people start to cheer for you to get knocked off your throne, much like Mike Tyson in boxing. But if Ronnie Coleman raises the bar again at 42 years old, I'll be the first one standing up giving him a round of applause, and I think the fans will too, and we can appreciate that kind of a performance. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. This contest is not won. It's not a slam dunk. Ronnie's got more to lose this year than any other Mr. Olympias before. Yeah, he's gotten by a couple of times. He got by Kevin Levrone in 2000. He snuck past Jay Cutler in 2001. He's not sneaking by anybody. He's being looked at with a megascope for any inconsistencies in his physique. And also, if he does make improvements, then we've got to acknowledge that at 42 years old, like Chris Dickerson, he would A, be one of the oldest Mr. Olympias ever to win this title, be the all-time winning Mr. Olympia with 9 in a row, and you know, very few sports can boast that kind of a record for a champion, you know, of that caliber.
Shawn, let's play devil's advocate for 1 second. Let's just say it doesn't go Ronnie's way for whatever reason. He comes in off, somebody comes in just 110%, as my old football coach used to like to say. Let's say Ronnie loses the title. Does Ronnie come back next year and try to reclaim it and then retire, or does he just hang it up?
Ronnie is a blue-collar worker. Ronnie Coleman, if he got second place and $90,000, he'd be the first one to go, look, I just won $90,000. I'm going to come back next year.
Right.
This is all he does. He's a machine. Bodybuilding is all he does. I'm not saying that's all he is as a person, but he knows where his bread and butter come from, and he also knows where his passion is. The difference between Ronnie Coleman and some of the other bodybuilders is he loves what he's doing. These other guys are doing it because this is their job. And you get to a point where it pays the bills. You get to a point where you try to make the improvements from year to year, and it's the daily grind. Ronnie Coleman breathes and sleeps bodybuilding. If he's not in the Mr. Olympia contest, he's still probably going to be training just as hard. Unfortunately for him, he's going to probably wind up going the way of a Dorian Yates. It's going to take an injury to get Ronnie Coleman sitting on the sidelines, unfortunately. And no one wishes that on him, but his style of training, it's not going to change because that's what made Ronnie Coleman what it is. He can't lighten up the weight and train for general maintenance and general fitness. Just like Dorian Yates couldn't. And he tore his bicep, he tore his tricep, he injured his shoulder, he injured his quadricep. All that happened before he retired as a pro bodybuilder. Ronnie Coleman battling the minor injuries, they're not severe enough to sit him on the sidelines. I believe Ronnie in the second place or third place would be trying to come back again next year because that's all he knows.
Well, you've seen the pictures of Ronnie, you've seen the pictures of Jay and Dexter. Prediction, Shawn, is it lights out for everybody else, and will Ronnie Coleman reign supreme for number 9?
Well, the one thing I've never really been good at is predictions, but I will say this. We'll have a front row seat right there on the stage as you and I call the show as masters of the ceremonies for the Olympia. It is a three-way horse race here as far as I'm concerned. The contest itself will take place somewhere along the lines of, 4th place on down to 10th place. There'll be a really good show there. But the top 3 guys, the last 3 guys standing on the stage, is going to be anybody's guess. But I believe all 3 of them, A, are worthy of the title, and B, no matter who wins the title, there's probably going to be some boos. There's probably going to be a lot of cheers. Nobody's going to go away happy except one person. And whatever that person that wins the title winds up doing with it, more power to them, because we'd like to see some change in the sport of bodybuilding in a positive way that brings a lot more people, a lot more interest, and we wind up back on mainstream TV.
You got it. Well, Olympia just around the corner. You heard it from the man himself. You heard our top 3 predictions. For Shawn Ray, this is Bob Cicherillo, and we'll see you in Las Vegas, Nevada.